evening and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us from Talking Films Online, or TFO as we call it. TFO was founded in June 2020 during the lockdown by Professor Nikhila and Dr. Geeta Viswanath, almost on a whim. What started as a spontaneous idea has now become a vibrant community of film scholars, researchers, students, teachers, and passionate lovers of cinema. Every Saturday at 9 p.m. on Zoom, we come together, we discuss films from across the world in multiple languages and cultures. The format is simple yet powerful. Someone from our group selects a film, we all watch it in our own time and pace, and then we meet to discuss it. Over the years, we have also been joined by filmmakers, editors, cinematographers like Aparna Sen, Amol Palekar, Adur Gopalakrishnan, and many more. We have explored cinema through various lenses, hosting themed festivals on East European, Iranian, and women's cinema, among others. Every June, to mark our anniversary, we host a smartphone short filmmaking contest for students and organize a lecture series in university departments. And just this past September, we held our first offline event, an international seminar on Indian cinema in the digital era in collaboration with FCT Baroda. Tonight's discussion is part of our ongoing Ritwik Ghatak Centenary Festival, and we are going to focus on Nagarik, a significant film by the master filmmaker. We are especially honored to have Dr. Sanghita Sen with us to initiate the discussion. Dr. Sanghita Sen is an assistant professor of visual communication and digital culture at Northumbria University, UK. She teaches both practice-based and theoretical modules in film and television and holds dual PhDs from Jadavpur University in Comparative Literature and from the University of St. Andrews in Film Studies. Her research explores anti-colonialism, Indian political cinema, transnational thought cinema, international film flows, popular cinema, and more. She is also a documentary filmmaker and is currently working on a monograph on Indian third cinema, as well as a feature-length documentary on partition and Ghatak himself. Her recent and forthcoming works include Ghatak in the Shadows, Films That Struggled, Bloomsbury 2020. The documentarian Ritwik Ghatak, People's Artist, People's Cinema, which is forthcoming in HarperCollins, and Rinal Sen and Indian Third Cinema, the counter archive of the 1970s, forthcoming journal article. I hope that now I give Dr. Sangeeta Sen over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Muskan. That was very kind words, and thank you very much for that. And thank you everyone for joining here, and I'm really looking forward to nice time spending with you talking about this film and also Ritwik Ghatak's film practice more general. That's what fascinates me more, obviously. So I hope Nagarik made you reflect a lot about different issues, which some of them are obviously of the old times when the film was made, and obviously we should also ask the question, how many of the issues that Ghatak raises in this film is still very contextual and still very relevant, in our present time context, not just with reference to India, but transnationally as well. For example, migration and ongoing genocide and, all other kind of stuff. And, what we could draw from this film with reference to talking point conversation. I think that might be a good place to begin. Regarding this session and the session in the next week that I'll be there as well, I was thinking of making it more of a conversation than me delivering monologues on my research findings. Sometimes, I find other people's research finding might appear as kind of boring. So I think a conversation, or adda as we call it in Bangla, will be more interesting and hopefully mutually beneficial, because always conversation opens up areas of learning. We learn from each other, and it's also collaborative knowledge creation. I bring my interpretation on the table, you bring yours, and then I think we create a discursive, safe space in which we could agree, disagree, debate, which is all about Ghatak's film, as we notice in his over. So to start the conversation, I will share with you some initial ideas that might help navigating today's session, and then we can continue to build on that via input from all of us. Does this make sense? Okay, so often when people talk about Ghatak, most part of it is usually either about the aesthetics and medial experimentation about his films, or about his alcoholism, romanticizing him as a male author, unpredictability, and his tragic life. Although these are all legit talking points with reference to Ghatak, but I feel that these talking points potentially overshadow something very central and absolutely crucial about Ghatak's creative practices. That is, his spirit of activism, his political philosophy behind his oeuvre. That includes his short stories, his plays, his films, his documentaries, and also his interviews and his writing on cinema, and yeah, these kinds of things, and his collaboration with his students as well as other people in his team. So I feel that the only talking about aesthetics and romanticizing him as a male tragic, very talented figure. He was talented, there's no doubt about it, but it does overshadow the spirit of activism that I think is a landmark of Ritwik Ghatak. And Ghatak's vital contribution as a documentarian of contemporary history, not just of South Asia, but also his commentary on different issues of transnational importance, international importance. As we embark on celebrating his birth centenary this year, it feels apt to engage with a bit more with these less explored aspects of his creative practice when we marvel at the masterpieces of cinematic art that he created. This will enable us to think of Ghatak as an organic intellectual, as someone with deep connection with the society and class that he came from, and who also acted as a leader and an organizer, and play a critical role. He played a critical role in developing class consciousness and challenging the existing power structures, hegemony. He himself, contested hegemony within the film industry, and which is why sometimes we see he was never backed. His projects are never backed. So he has more unfinished, incomplete, not made projects than he could complete. So that tells us something about the hurdles that he faced, and that was a lot to do. That had lot to do with his non-compromising kind of almost stubbornness. That he was so committed, and this was almost it was so central to his being that he didn't mind anything else that he faced, and he took full responsibility of that. I believe that's what I understand Ghatak as a person, as a creative person, a creative practitioner. Ghatak was among successful organizers of cultural movements such as the Indian People's Theatres Association, IPTA, popularly known as, and Cine Technicians Trade Union. He was also very much into trade union for cine technicians. So these organizational platforms helped forging collaborations among cultural activists that continued to his filmmaking days, and literally till the end of his life. For example, the creative collaboration among Ghatak and Bijon Bhattacharya. Many of you will know Bijon Bhattacharya as the author of Nabanno, but also he was a very successful actor. He worked with Mrinal Sen, he worked with Ghatak, and a few other people as well. So he was one of the pioneering, like political theater, political playwright, right? He was also a theater director, actor, and script writer. He wrote a few scripts also. And Hemangu Bishwas, who was a singer, composer, organizer, folk music collector, and almost like a senior figure in the IPTA movement. Shotindra Bhattacharya is the person who plays the role of Ramu in Nagarik. And you will see this character in almost all Ghatak films. Not almost, in all Ghatak films, made, unmade, he was there with Ghatak all through. Ganesh Mukherjee, another actor who also comes from theatre. Khalid Chaudhary, he was a theatre activist and artist, a famous set designer. Ronin Rai Chaudhary, he was a folk singer and vocalist. Jyotirindra Moitro, again a singer lyricist who was the music director of Komal Gandhar actually. This continued from IPTA days until the end of Ghatak's filmmaking life and Ghatak's life, literally. One can find a tendency sometimes to create opposition or binaries or kind of rivalry, not in a good sense, among Ghatak and his contemporaries. You will often hear comparison with Satyajit Ray or Mrinal Sen, these kinds of binaries. We are so good at making binaries. So to my understanding, such issues don't serve our understanding of these artists in any significant way. In fact, collegiality, this might be good for pub talk, and or cafe talk, if you like. But I think it isn't very useful in a meaningful way, In fact, collegiality, mutual respect, and even friendship among Ghatak, Sen, Rai, and other contemporaries are important aspects of their film practice around that time. It was also a spirit of that period of Indian cinema, I feel, more particularly Bengali cinema. For example, Satyajit Ray did the cover design for Mrinal Sen's book on Charlie Chaplin. Mrinal Sen wrote, a few book on Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was Mrinal Sen's hero. So he wrote a couple of books, I think 3. One is an edition, but 2 are separate books. So the first book, Satyajit Ray did the cover design. Sen introduced Ghatak to Ramesh Joshi and to a couple of other people because Sen was in Kolkata before Ghatak arrived at Kolkata. Ghatak lived in Kolkata. Ghatak studied in Baliganj Government School when he was very young, but that is not what, he was just, a boy going to school. So not very familiar with the, younger people who are getting involved in this cultural activism of the leftists. So Mrinal Sen came to Kolkata to Scottish Church College to study physics. So Mrinal Sen came here as a young man. So he knew these people probably little more, earlier than Ghatak did. So several of the introductions happened through Mrinal Sen, and very remarkable introduction was of Ramesh Joshi, because Ramesh Joshi was Ritwik Ghatak's editor for all his projects. Rai recommended Ghatak for the teaching job at the FTII. And he also wrote the foreword of the first posthumous volume of Ghatak's writing on cinema and acted as the one of the founding members of Ritwik Memorial Trust that worked to preserve and publish his works after his death. Obviously, Surama Ghatak has a massive role to play in all of this, as an archivist. That's a different conversation, actually, wives as producers or wives as archivists of male authors who we celebrate, but we don't look at their partners. So I think that is a very interesting conversation from a gender point of view, maybe some other day. So the IPTA, so such collaborations are important signs of the collective consciousness or collective consensus that prevailed in the leftist cultural practices of the of that period. I'm mentioning this because, we leftists are very good in splitting ourselves into groups. So factionalism has been an issue with the left politics, not just in India, everywhere in the world. So sometimes when we are self-critical and we talk about these things, we forget the collaboration and the collective activities that we do. So I think it is also important for us to remember that important aspect of our political and cultural life. So the IPTA was a beacon of communist cultural movement that highlighted class struggle and proletarian internationalism. Ghatak was a high priest of this congregation and rose to prominence as a people's artist through his plays and later his films. Um, from a letter of Ghatak to Surama Ghatak, dated 26th June 1971, he wrote that Puran Chand Joshi, PC Joshi, famously known as, called as PC Joshi. PC Joshi was the General Secretary of the CPI between 1935 and 1947, called Ghatak the only people's artist in India. Ghatak proudly identified himself with this description. He considered film to be a collective art, as it was a form of mass media suitable to incite political mobilization. Nagarik is a wonderful example of that belief. Let's see some of Ghatak's own thoughts that drove his engagements with different forms of creative practices, including literature, theater, and cinema. The following quote is from Cinema and I, first published in 1963 in Montage. He stated, and I quote, "I believe in committed cinema, committed to that contemporary reality, to the daily acts of heroism in that reality. No important work can be created without this commitment, I think, because this commitment presupposes a desire for change of that reality." End quote. With the idea of commitment in mind, and here he talks about commitment, but in a time and again he speaks about artists' involvement. He also talks about how artists should actually come down to the footpath. And you will see this reflected in a letter that he wrote to Shashodhar Mukherjee, who was one of his bosses in Filmistan studio in Bombay. It almost reads like a manifesto. It's his letter, his vision of political cinema. It's a small letter. Clearly, Shashodhar Mukherjee probably wasn't very happy to receive such a letter, but he did write a letter like that. And he also wrote a manifesto of like cultural involvement of different leftist and socialist organization, mainly the Communist Party, in his thesis on cultural movement, and which actually led to his expulsion from the CPI. So that was, I think, that was written in 1953. Surama Ghatak was one of the co-writers, and Mumtaz Chaudhary was another. So these are the people who wrote it, but mainly it was written by Ghatak. Ritwik Memorial Trust released it. It was lost for a long time. Then Chief Minister Buddhadev Bhattacharya, actually, while doing some archival work in the party archive, he found that that submission and handed over to Surama Ghatak, and they took initiative and they published it, actually. So I don't know whether it's still in print, but if it is available, I think anyone who is interested in filmmaking, interested in engaging cinema, should read it. And even people wanting to practice popular cinema should read it, because at the end of the day, it is cinema, and it should actually lead to some kind of engagement. And I have nothing against mainstream entertainment cinema, because it reaches out to such a huge mass of people, and actually it's a very good weapon against so many things going wrong everywhere. So, the rise of the right wing, rise of fascism, rise of ethno-nationalism, and all kinds of evil, to be honest. So I think it is a very good document to get back to, and we should engage with it more. I think that will be a real tribute paid to Ghatak. Okay, coming back to Ghatak again. So here I was talking about commitment, the idea of commitment. So with this idea of commitment in mind, if we revisit Ghatak's much quoted comment about his reason to become a filmmaker, his position as an organic intellectual becomes clearer. In response to a question about why he came to filmmaking, I think this interview was sometime in 1963, 64, like that. So Ghatak famously said that it is not for the love of cinema that he came to making films, but because of cinema's medial ability or medial potential to reach millions of people simultaneously. He switched from literature to theater for similar reason, that is, to be able to reach out to a large number of people. Keeping this in mind, it would not be out of place to say that he wanted to use cinema's kinetic capacity to trigger the act of witnessing by the audiences, rather than entertaining them with its artistic potential. This is not to say that Ghatak didn't hold the artistic potential of cinema in high regard. He politicized cinema's aesthetic potential to trigger witnessing that will lead to awakening about the social reality that surrounds us. He declared, I quote, "I have wanted to use cinema as a weapon, as a medium to express my views," end quote. Thus, it seems to me that filmmaking was part of his political organizing. His vision of people's cinema was prompted by his objection to commodification of cultural practices, driven by what Ashish Rajadhyaksha describes as the ideology that methodically obfuscates issues of social relevance and constructs images only for their aesthetic value. You will find this reference in page 9 of a book published by Bombay Screen Unit in 1982. This is available on Ashish Rajadhyaksha's academia.edu profile in PDF. This was written by him, titled Ritwik Ghatak, A Return to the Epic. This is another very early critical reflection on Ghatak's work, almost in a seminal work, actually. We should also read if we want to understand Ghatak, really. Ghatak resisted the spectacularization of mainstream entertainment cinema and instead undertook a politico-historical analysis of social oppression and struggles in his cinema by politicizing cinema and especially the genre of melodrama. Again, melodrama, because Indian audiences are familiar with this form through different forms of cultural practices, be it musical performances, song, dance, folk theater, or any other folk material that are available and available for circulation in our respective cultures all over India, actually. In an interview given to Jagat Bandyopadhyay in 1969, he said, all Bengali texts, these are all Bengali interviews. I translated it, so kind of my take on it also. So he said, I quote, "I don't want to live using art as a comfort blanket," end quote. So, documentation of contemporary reality and asking difficult questions became of such paramount importance to him. One can see this ongoing concern throughout his filmmaking career, right from Nimai Ghosh directed film Chinnamul, in which he assisted. He worked as an assistant. So this film was made in 1950. So Ghatak was only 25-year-old. He also acted in a small role in that film. And Chinnamul is the first film that uses documentary footage of the partition refugees. So that way, it is also some kind of counter archive of the those situations, like, people coming there, their distress, their pain, their suffering, and also a lot of non-film material in it. So that way it was quite remarkable, quite experimental, and quite path-breaking, to be honest. So right from Nimai Ghosh's Chinnamul to Nagarik, through his last film Juktitokko Ar Goppo, Reason, Debate and Stories, which also uses a lot of documentary footage from films that were either banned, for example, that has footage from Amar Lenin, which was banned around that time because of its content. And then also there was another documentary he made on Purulia Chou dance. So that, there are footage from those two documentaries in this film as well. That is Jukti Tokko Ar Goppo, Reason, Debate and Stories. In a 1973 interview, affirming an urgency for making Jukti Tokko Ar Goppo, please note that Ghatak passed away untimely in 1976 February. He is making this film in 1973. He was out of a mental institution. He was institutionalized. He was, detected. He was clinically diagnosed with schizophrenia, depression, and all those things. So his mental health situation wasn't good. His financial situation was bad because he wasn't able to make any film around that time. Kept making documentary films. Started a journal on theater because he wasn't able to do cinema. So he did the next thing that he loved very much. So he was doing that, planning several things, making documentaries, and also organizing, fundraising to support Bangladesh Liberation War, Mukti Juddha. So he was doing all these things, which is why I think his activist spirit is something we really need to take into consideration when we engage with his cinema and other writing on cinema. And thinking of this, it isn't surprise. I'm not surprised that Ghatak acts almost like an icon, a mascot of rebellious spirit in wherever there is a like anti-establishment movement or students protest, Ghatak comes there in some form or the other. Here I'm not just talking about film schools. I'm talking about there may be some student movement going on, and a film screening of Ritwik Ghatak takes place usually. Whatever film they can lay their hand on, they do it. And I think it is this activist spirit that makes them, makes students feel very close to Ghatak. I think they feel that, as a student, I also felt that, okay, this is a man who understands us, perhaps. Long time back when dinosaurs were walking on the earth still, when I was a student, that was long, long ago. But yeah, we did feel that way, you see. So in a 1973 interview, he was going through all these things, and then he affirmed the urgency for making Jukti Tokko Ar Goppo. He noted, and I quote, "I was able to closely watch the city from the Kolkata pavements in 1971 in my inebriated state. Since I have a status and I was also able to watch the reactions of the rich, I tried doing in the film a dissection of each strata of the society and how people reacted at the time, a kind of overview," end quote. So this is his continuation about, like creating the act of witnessing using the medium of cinema. Finally, coming back to Nagarik, some production, context of Nagarik, which is our case study for today's conversation. The script of the film was written between 1950 and 1951. So probably around the time either he was working on Chinnamul with Nimai Ghosh or immediately after that. And the filming was done in early 1953. This was most likely the first crowd-funded film in India. The crew comprised almost exclusively of his IPTA comrades. Nobody took any fees for their work. Noted cinematographer Ramananda Sengupta did the camera. People working in the film, as I said, didn't take any money. And several people, including Ghatak, financially contributed to make this film. And those who didn't act, those who didn't also serve as technicians, they also offered their labor in other ways, which these days we started calling, we have a term now, emotional labor. So that emotional labor is equally invaluable, right? So this is how this film was made. However, the film did not see the light of the day. The film did receive an award in 1954, despite not being released theatrically. When I interviewed Ramananda Sengupta in 2017, he told me that the film remained canned somewhere and the negatives remained in the Bengal Film Laboratory. Again, canned, and they melted the negatives to extract silver. So the negative was lost. Sometime, in mid 1970s, after Ghatak's untimely passing, a positive copy of the film was found in Bangladesh, which was then used to make a dupe negative, enabling its release in 1977, along with Ghatak's last film, Jukti Tokko Ar Goppo, which is a very unique cinematic event that, such an important filmmaker whose first film and last film were released together. So Ghatak did not see this film being released. And I got this information from Ramananda Sengupta when I interviewed him. And also I got a confirmation from Mashima, that is Shurama Ghatak. I was in communication with her for quite a long time, actually. It is important to note that this film was a pre-Pather Pachali and pre-Indian International Film Festival 1952 film. So people haven't yet seen the Italian neo-realist cinemas in India, unless of course, like Satyajit Ray did watch those films in London. When he was in London, he was working here and did watch these films, which absolutely changed his vision of cinema, which he said again and again in different, in a lot of writings and interviews. But many people haven't seen these films. It is important to note that Nagarik was conceptualized before all these transformative incidents happened in Indian film practice scenario. There were another film which was a social realist film, I must say, which is Chetan Anand's Nicha Nagar, 1946 film, which was an adaptation of Maxim Gorky's Lower Depths, that received the Best Film Award at the first Cannes Film Festival in 1946. This is obviously a predecessor of Indian social realist cinema. But if you consider post-independence Indian cinema situation, then Nimai Ghosh's 1950 classic Chinnamul was probably the first social realist film in a sense of the term, right? By the way, Ghatak himself translated Lower Depths into Bangla for a theatrical production for the IPTA unit that he led in Kolkata. This is the production context of Nagarik. I'll now conclude my initial presentation with Ghatak's response to a question about Nagarik in a 1967 interview. So it is slightly long quote, but I thought, we would love to know what Ghatak thought about film, because I claimed that for Ghatak did not make film just for art. Art was never for art's sake for people like Ghatak, Mrinal Sen. It had a different purpose altogether. And I have support I have some kind of support for my claim in what Ghatak says here. So I quote, Not many realist films were being made in Bengal around that time. From that angle, I tried making a film on a good subject. This was the first objective representation of challenges of the middle classes faced in the post Second World War Bengal. Just a small explanation here. These days, the way we understand the concept of the middle classes was different in post partition context in which they understood the middle classes. In the conversation, we can explore it a little bit more, but I thought I need to give this kind of a little bit of my footnote, if you like. Again, going back to what Ghatak said, quote, the cycle of a determined citizen's search, this film is about actually, the cycle of a determined citizen's search for a bit of security is its subject. This film isn't not at all great with regard to technique. In fact, contemporary mature audiences might not even like some aspect of the film. For example, the soundtrack or the makeup is really bad. But what it wanted to convey is still valid to me. A young man used to dream of making it big. He goes for interviews after interviews and comes back unsuccessful. But his hope is not extinguished, although at times it is temporarily dampened. I think he thinks around the corner, he thinks around the corner the lucky good turn is awaiting, but finally realized that there is no good turn to wait for him because in our existing social structure, that is not possible. Class barriers are impossible to outdo. The film ends with this realization. He is in love with a woman but can't marry. Consequently, their relationship turns bitter. It is not possible to marry without a job, but considering another pair of hands to add to their struggle for existence, the protagonist decided to marry the woman. I described the condition of the decaying lower middle class society of Bengal in the structure of this narrative. This statement is still valid to me. End quote. So that was a few of the things that I wanted to say to, just start the conversation. And yeah, I'll shut up now. So question or whatever. Yeah.
You would like to open up this discussion, can open the mics and speak.
Yeah, just a moment. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? If anybody is not. When I started watching the film, I felt like it kind of is similar to the novel The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I mean, that has a background of Great Depression, but it has the background of post-partition situations in Bengal. And moreover, like leaving the houses and looking for jobs and going for multiple opportunities around other places, class struggles, economic struggles around along the way. So I felt that it relates to that. I mean, it is kind of similar to that. And it was interesting to catch that point.
Yes, of course. I mean, Ghatak was a very, very avid, an avid reader and kept track of what was happening around the world. Like when India was being partitioned, the state of Palestine, state of Israel was being, like created, and Nakba was happening, 1948, Nakba. The great disaster was also happening. People who kept track of things, they were aware of these mass migrations, millions of people forced out of their home and never allowed back. So I mean, these are the things, of course, it touches a nerve. Absolutely. Yeah, I think you are absolutely right. Yeah.
Sangeeta, I have a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think were the reasons for the late release of the film? Like, was it a problem for distribution? And since you are also working on third cinema, I was looking at, the parallels between
Hmm.
Nagarik as well as all of Ghatak cinema, also in a way sharing a lot of features of third cinema as well.
Hmm.
And especially Nagarik, as you said, was the first crowd-funded
Hmm.
film in India. So, and then its distribution problems, all of that. So, any thoughts on that?
Actually, I'm not sure about. See, I actually dug quite a lot about why it wasn't released around that time. It's getting an award, and imagine this releasing around that time. It is a pre Pather Pachali film, so realism will obviously, quality wise, I mean, Ghatak said it again and again, and everybody will agree, I guess. Pather Pachali is a different ball game altogether. So, equality wise, it is not comparable. But what I'm saying is, this is also a first effort, very nascent stage of, like social realist or socialist realism, cinema of socialist realism. So I think this could have marked a very good beginning for that kind of alternative filmmaking, which is political in nature. Coming back to your question, why this wasn't released? So there is no clear answer in, even in, like Ritwik Memorial Trust released a booklet with lot of interviews, conversation, reflection of people who are involved with the making of Nagarik, to celebrate the 50th year of Nagarik, right? But in that book also, and talking to Mashima, talking to other people, there might have been some issue with paperwork in the sense that, product, I mean, it was produced by contribution from many people. Bhupati Nandi was one of them, and other people in the IPTA who were all organizers, and then I think there was the dispute about the ownership of the film possible. So should, who will be the owner of the film, that kind of thing. And also, I think by that time, Ghatak was already expelled. So there might have been some kind of factional, like politics may have worked. Like some people might have actually backstabbed. So, like initially it was a group effort, and then some of his former comrades who were not too happy with Ghatak, and how it works. So it is possible, but there is no concrete evidence to say that, definitely say that this was the case. But obviously Ghatak and people who supported him, they ran out of resources to chase or like deal with the legal issues of the film, which is which is why it was canned. And that was also the time Ghatak got a job with Filmistan Studio as a scenarist, story and scriptwriter. And then he had to move to Bombay. So, and then later, he around that time he was also working on, just to run his kitchen. He had to work on, he was working with, he was commissioned to make two documentaries commissioned by the government of Bihar ke Darshaniya Sthan and Adivasiyon ki Jivan Srot, Adivasiyon ka Jivan Srot. So these are the two films that he made, which will again be instrumental, particularly Adivasiyon ka Jivan Srot will be instrumental in his Ojantrik, making of Ojantrik. He goes back again, and then yeah, he makes that film. So I think there might have been several factors, but also, because I think he decided to move on because it was too much of a painful thing. It's not a nice feeling when, people And you do see a little bit of this tension in Komal Gandhar, actually. You do see that, that like factionalism and that kind of stuff in Komal Gandhar. Komal Gandhar very well, it really does a very good job in depicting the dynamics, the complex dynamics within the IPTA, and how Ghatak becomes isolated along with Shurama Ghatak and a few people who remained with him. Sotindra Bhattacharya was one of them, obviously. Bijan Bhattacharya was another. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Sangeeta, just to kind of keep the conversation going before others might want to speak. I was thinking of this film in the light of all that you said, particularly about his political orientation, ideology at that point in time. And I was looking at how in this film Ramu seems pretty much on his own. There is a workers' movement, and there is allusion to the movement in the course of the film. But it doesn't seem like a choice to him at that point in time. And it doesn't look like, Ghatak is in any way pushing for or even being critical of his protagonist for, if not protagonist, one of the characters for not going in that direction. So I was thinking, I mean, as you said, there is a certain distance between us watching the film today, between its making, its release, and so on. Considering all that, I was thinking, it seems like it's a, I don't know, when they're harking about a large house, is it a landlord family? Is this film talking about, a transition from a feudal to a middle class nuclear family? Because the couples seem to be going in for companionate marriages, and they have this vision of, or at least Ramu has this vision of a house with a garden and so on, which is very, very, like a nuclear family kind of a dream. So is this talking about the impossibility of this transition, or the difficulty of that transition? I mean, in terms of its politics, the larger politics that you placed Ghatak in, and the politics in the film, uh, there seemed to be a little, I mean, that's not my reading of the film. So I was just wondering, if you would like to talk about that a little bit. Yeah, thanks.
I think this is what you just mentioned, Nikhila. I think these are absolutely wonderful points. Actually, very good point to like get into that film. First of all, I think Ghatak was concentrating on, because Ghatak just was involved with Chinnamul, so that was showing the macrocosm, and I think Ghatak was showing the microcosm. So what was happening inside the household? Okay, and I think this is also Nagarik, also a very important film in my reading of Ghatak as a filmmaker. A very important film, because here he introduces the concept of new home for the first time, which becomes a kind of, which reaches its potential in Subarna Rekha. And in Subarna Rekha, if you notice the description of the house, that there are blue mountains, there are full of flowers, and like butterflies go around, and then like paddy field with wavy, like the what should I say, the rice, the ripe rice, they are like waving their head in the wind. It's a very romantic picture. But again, this is the picture that is very dear to any person who has lost their homes. So that big house, in my reading, I read it as the lost home partition. So the big house is undivided Bengal. And this is the small house is, like you see it in Mrinal Sen films also. It's a massive mansion in which, each family is allocated only one room. It's almost like an asylum seeker's quarter, where the space is always very small. People are more. Although, I mean, obviously it can be read that, as you said, that, he is trying to, that calendar, that picture of a house in the calendar, which he tries to go and pick up, but he leaves it behind, right? And then, so I think it is a journey for an individual, from individual to the collective. I think towards the end, he starts his journey as individual. So it is his dream. And also there is something about the fragility of masculinity. Like, male members are supposed to look after their family, right? So he's trying to get a job to give better days to his family. To his mom is very close to him. His sister is also very close to him, right? His father, he is trying his best to get validation from his dad, but his dad is so, like, I mean, it's very difficult for him. There is a dialogue, জীবনটা শুরু করেছিলাম এমন নির্মল ছন্দে, এভাবে শেষ হয়ে যাওয়া কি ঠিক? That is, I started this life with such a good rhythm. Should it end like this? And this is the exact dialogue that you will hear Bhrigu say in Komal Gandhar when they are seeing from the other side of Ganga. They're looking at Bangladesh from other side of Ganga, when he's saying that I'm trying to locate my home on the other side. That used to be my home, which is now a foreign land. Even if I want to go there, I can never go there. So I think this angst of rupture first came, it was shaping in Nagarik, I think. So constantly, when his mother talks about the big house, his mother talks about one tree, one particular tree that she brought with her when she got married, and she planted it. And then she talks about its flowers, she talks about its fruit, and all kinds of things, right? So it is intricately intertwined. And he never talks about partition in that film. But I think that film refers to partition, and I think in a very subtle way, but in a very definite way also. And then he realized, and also there is also this sense of betrayal is there, which you see being clearly pronounced in Jukti Tokko Ar Goppo, when he says, that whatever happened, and then the so-called independence came. He uses that, and then he spits. Shadhinata? So he does that. It's just like, and Ghatak's acting is quite theatrical. And it tells you that, he's from that theater background, right? But also, I think this massive partition created such a havoc in the life of millions of people. This displacement, which is not even properly documented. Bengal partition is not properly documented. Punjab partition is better documented than, Bengal partition. So what happened is, the magnanimity, the magnitude of it is so massive. It couldn't be the mode of realism. that could capture it adequately. I think this is also another reason why Ghatak actually picked up melodrama. And I think that is one of the things. And finally, yes, initially he's on his own. He's looking for a job and he's trying to look after his family. It's exactly like, like American dream kind of thing. You work hard, you have a better life, and that kind of thing. I think Ghatak is being very critical about that in the film, because when he's on his own, he actually isn't able to pull it together, because the problem is not an individual problem, it's a problem of collective, isn't it? And then which is why towards the end, Ramu says, we are going to fight it. And then you listen to, like in the background, in the soundtrack, there is Marseille being played and International being played, right? Ghatak uses such references effortlessly to see that, like this person, failure as individual, but as a collective, finally resolves to fight back. And initially, it is also some kind of switch in class position. Like, obviously, these people, you are so right, probably they are all, upper caste people, obviously from feudal background, and these are people who come from landed property owners, right? And Ghatak himself, Ghatak's father was a Rai Bahadur. Ghatak's father was part of the British administration. He was a district magistrate, right? And and they were very reputed, they're very respected. But Ghatak's political activism started with anti-fascist movement in Dhaka as a young man. In Ghatak's interview, you will see that. Unfortunately, Ghatak's interviews are not fully translated. I'm doing a few, I've done a couple of translation for my thesis, but I'm thinking of translating his interviews. I think with his interviews, if we look at his films, it gives us a very different light, And I think Ghatak emphasizes that, like, that isolated, the whole system wants us to be isolated, then there is no movement. It is very easy to hush up one voice, which is why trade union is so important, which is why, like collective action is so important, right? Solidarity is so important. And I think as a person from that class, Ghatak understood the dynamics of that class. So he can only speak from that position. But he also was trying to create a class consciousness and questioning the hegemony. In that, Ghatak becomes an organic intellectual for me. I don't know whether I answered your question, Nikhila.
No, that's okay. I was just kind of opening out some issues and questions. There are more questions, I think, in the chat box. Maybe
Okay.
Muskan would want to read them out. Or even Ananya could speak. Yeah.
Okay. So Ananya, why don't you say it?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Yes. I'm Madhavi. See, every time I watch this movie, I think it has many layers into that. So before I had few questions on that. Before I ask my questions, I'd like to really express my sincere appreciation, for your insightful reflections on Nagarik, your nuanced reading of Ghatak's, cinematic language and historical sensibility which he brings in, which has really added rich layers of meaning to our engagement with the film today. As someone deeply interested in the intersections of film form, memory, and socio-political context, I found your interpretations of Nagarik particularly illuminating, especially in the way you foregrounded Ghatak's, visual storytelling, cultural politics. Thank you so much for that, actually. While I was watching this movie again, I watched almost, because I grew up in Kolkata. So through the lens of, if you see post-colonial theory and subaltern studies, how does the Nagarik reflect the dislocation, then unemployment and identity crisis of partition displaced Bengali youth? Can we interpret the protagonist's journey, as emblematic or subaltern modernity within a nation state still negotiating its colonial hangover? That was my first question, actually. Then, when coming to the other question is considering that Nagarik predates the Indian New Wave. Actually, how do you see Nagarik, this movie, which predates the Indian New Wave? So, how do you see it as a forerunner to the themes of urban alienation, moral decay, and socio-political critique found in later parallel cinema in India?
See, yes, obviously, Nagarik predates, Indian parallel cinema, because parallel cinema, like film historians take 1969 as the beginning of Indian parallel cinema, in a sense, because Film Finance Corporation started working, and then Bhuvan Shum was made with that money. So that way, it's like filmmaking and also structural things also contributing to the development of parallel cinema model, right? It is a filmmaking model. So that way it is it predates. But philosophically speaking, film philosophy wise, I think it is a continuity. If you see another film like Achut Kanya, it's a silent film. Ashok Kumar, Devika Rani, these people are there. So these are the film which also touches on the same concern, like untouchability was something that was touched in that film. Also in Babulal Painter's Shaukari Pass, that film is no longer available, it's lost. But that was about Indian farmers, like basically farmers in Maharashtra, how they are being exploited by moneylenders. These are all very social realist concerns that parallel cinema actually addressed. So many of Shambenegal film actually addressed this, like Nihalni film. So many of filmmakers actually touched upon these these issues. So there is obviously a continuity of content, if you like, or issues or subject or areas that parallel cinema touched. So that way it is predates. I'm not sure whether how am I going to fit Ramu as a subaltern character? His caste position wise, it will be hard to place him as a subaltern character because he has certain privileges. But at the same time, he, economically speaking, and also as a refugee, obviously they are at the receiving end. So that is that will be interesting if somebody does an analysis of that. I think that will be really an interesting thing to see. But I think if there exists some rigorous reasoning, I don't see why anyone can't do that. It's possible to look at it that way, obviously. Post-colonial, within the premises of post-colonial studies, like, yes, of course, we can read it within the premises of post-colonial studies, and yes, decolonization and that kind of stuff. And colonial hangover, yes, I think Ghatak is actually quite critical of the, if you like, colonial mindset. Actually, we retained a lot of the like way of doing things that continues from the colonial time, or the way we conduct ourselves. I come from a discipline of my, before film studies, my discipline was English. I'm very aware what goes on with reference to, as a student of English literature, I've seen, how people admire us, how people admired us because we studied English. I couldn't speak very good English around that time. I come from a Bengali medium background, come from a refugee family. So financially wasn't in a very good place, actually. So we had, like all refugee families, we did have our hardships and everything. And then no convent education, no English medium education, struggling with my English. I still speak in Indian English very much. So, I had my share of struggle. So I'm very sure Indian education system retains quite a lot of colonial legacy. You will see hierarchy, calling people sir, ma'am, that kind of thing. People get offended, actually. Sometimes people do get offended if you don't give them respect. So, I think Ghatak is very critical of that, and I think Ramu's lack of success in different interviews when he's on his own and he's dreaming about getting, like trying to find a suit, like, pant and shirt and that kind of thing to go for an interview. I think all these things are, subtle criticism of colonial legacy. And then when joining, Ghatak's films, people find sometimes Ghatak's films to be gloomy. I think they are very hopeful. Ghatak's films never end in despair. They always mark a new beginning. Think about films like Nagarik. It ended. You will think, oh my God, they are going to be evicted. Everybody, none of the people found a fulfillment. It's like the paying guest who used to live there, who got romantically involved with Sita, right? So these are the things you will think that, oh my God, this family is going to completely break down. But it doesn't. All of them get together. And then and there is a resolve that, they are going to live in a slum maybe, but that is okay. So many people live in slums, and that is from a class position, that is a switch. But in acceptance, it is also accepting their newly assigned class position, isn't it? So that way, I think Ghatak is being both critical of, some kind of snootiness or, lack of comfort in living a life they think they don't deserve. So, I don't know whether I answered your question properly, but it was kind of, like stream of consciousness for me.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
Ma'am, can we take Ananya's question, please, before Rubia can
Yes,
answer
of
the
course.
question?
Yeah. Go on, Ananya.
Ananya can ask.
Yes, thank you so much, Sangeeta ma'am, and it's been a lovely pleasure and like a truly a productive time meeting you. So, ma'am, this was indeed my first time watching Ghatak's movie, and I did enjoy the movie a lot. I didn't know that even watching a movie black and white in the 21st century could also have my attention so much. And given the struggle of unemployment, which which captures the reality in the movie, that had my heart, because presently I've also kind of seen young people juggling tasks and trying to get good jobs just to get going in life. So, ma'am, something that also captured my attention was the character of Ramu's sister, who is not allowed to gain the higher education, and as the father says, that a degree means independence at this moment. So, ma'am, can you elucidate or have something to say about this feminist angle of on the movie? If you have any insight on Ghatak's feminism.
So if you watch Ghatak's other films, you will see Ghatak's films are, women characters are main characters in his films. Oftentimes you will see. And I don't know whether, strictly speaking, I can call Ghatak a feminist. he was very much a man. Man, not in not a gendered way, but I think he felt also very much like a man, because the kind of ambience he grew up in, that encourages that kind of thought process, I think. But I also think he believed in equality, and he did see displacement, migration, and this migration induced social problem, and how women were at the receiving end. So in Ghatak's film, you will see this women, very quiet women, but doesn't mean they are powerless. They're very quiet, like if you take, I don't know whether you've watched Cloud Capped Star, have you? Meghe Dhaka Tara, do watch that. That's one of Ghatak's most watched films worldwide. Okay. So in Cloud Capped Star, the protagonist is a woman, and a very quiet woman who only speaks her mind once. I don't want to give you spoiler. Just have a look at it, and then you will know what I'm trying to say. So I wouldn't categorically place Ghatak as a feminist, but I am a feminist. And when I see Ghatak's films, I see that he felt certain things the way that resonates with me. And then he's also critical of the family who didn't allow the girl to study. And later on, the father regrets, right? That, like education would have given her independence, or, some such thing. But also, I think this is another question we need to bear in mind. Household work is not useless. As feminists, we know that. The emotional labor is not useless. It's not unproductive. It is unproductive in the eye of patriarchal society. But it isn't unproductive actually. So I think it is possible to look at this. I mean, I have no idea what Ghatak intended, but Ghatak had in Ghatak's films, another aspect is also the brother-sister relationship, brother-sister bond. Ghatak had a twin, and they were separated because Ghatak's twin was married to a very important family in the then East Pakistan, which later became Bangladesh, and she remained there. And Ghatak, the rest of the family moved to West Bengal, Indian side of Bengal, divided Bengal, right? And that actually hurt Ghatak quite a lot. Twins, when they are separated, it's quite painful, I hear. I mean, I don't have a twin, so I wouldn't be able to see exactly the feeling, but I met her, his twin, and then I saw the pain, And this is actually, in Bengal partition, actually was quite embodied for Ghatak, because this was literally fracturing something which was supposed to be together. Okay, so one sister is there, brother is here, So you will see in most of his film, there is one of these characters. Another thing is, Ghatak had quite a few elder sisters, 3 more sisters who looked after Ghatak, okay, who really loved Ghatak, looked after him, and also influenced him quite a lot in different ways. So I would think that these are the factors, and Ghatak's mother was a very influential, Ghatak's mother's influence was very massive in Ghatak's own life. So I think, which is why, and because he saw very powerful women when he grew up around him, I think that is one of the reasons that inspired him to create his female characters in his films. So I'm not sure that it was made from a feminist perspective, but it definitely had an element of allyship in it, I would think. And it is something that we feminists could engage with and like explore further.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This was indeed truly full of newness, and this has helped me out with a new perspective. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yes, Rubaya.
Maya, I would like to ask a question from a different perspective.
Okay.
I'm pursuing PhD from Jadavpur University.
Mm-hmm.
My research area is Anthropocene and Margaret Atwood.
Mm-hmm.
And I have written a chapter on displacement, and also
Rubaya, keep the discussion to the film. You can speak to Sangeeta ma'am later. We can contact her. But right now, we'll keep the discussion to the film, Rubaya, please. You can contact ma'am later if she permits you. You can send her an email. Is that okay, Sangeeta?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I just briefly say your question and then go on.
আমি বাংলাতেই বলছি, তাহলে তাড়াতাড়ি বলা হয়ে যাবে। আমি
Okay.
বলছি যে আমি মানে ডিসপ্লেসমেন্ট নিয়ে কাজ করছি, মার্গারেট অ্যাটউড। আর মার্গারেট অ্যাটউডের হ্যান্ডমেড স্টিল, যেটা ওটার অ্যাডাপ্টেশন নিয়ে একটা চ্যাপ্টার লিখছি। এবার আমি পোস্ট ডক্টরাল করব, ওখানে আমি এই ট্রানজিশনটা চাচ্ছি 5GW ওয়্যারফেয়ার, তারপর ডিসপ্লেসমেন্ট এন্ড ফিল্ম স্টাডিজ আমি ইনক্লুড করতে চাচ্ছি। তো কিভাবে ট্রানজিশনটা করব, আমার পরের বছর সাবমিশন আছে, তো সেই রিলেটেড একটু গাইডেন্স।
Okay, so this is not a question that can be answered in this forum. Nikhila is absolutely right. Please write to me. I'll share my contact with you. Just write to me. I don't work on Anthropocene. I'm aware of Margaret Atwood's work and stuff like that. But I do work on migration. I work on partition a lot, and obviously Ghatak and other filmmakers who address this. So I can little bit talk about that, but I wouldn't know how you would actually transition from Atwood to just include these things. But strongly advise you to look at, because you are looking at Anthropocene, look at Titash Ekti Nodir Nam. Do look at that. Okay? Yeah, sure. Anyone else, please?
Add one point. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like Ananya's question. It's a fact that I remembered that just like it, Virginia Woolf also mentioned in her workroom of One Zone that if Shakespeare had a sister, she might not have had the privilege of studying and doing some sort of work, just like in the movie.
Yeah.
So that reminded
me. Oh yeah, totally. Like I think having sisters when somebody is growing up, and also having a big influence, on a person's growing up, makes a difference, I think. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And David, I completely agree with you. Yeah, it's a national and international forum. It's better to keep our conversation in a common language so that each one of us can understand each other perfectly. And thanks for mentioning that. Yeah.
I would like to say something.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a question, but I noticed something. I don't know if I'm correct or not. I think the film subtly reflected the caste system that was prevailing in the society, because they were looking for a perfect groom for Sita. But when Shagar came, they didn't approach him. I mean, their parents didn't approach him for the marriage. Instead, they asked him to find some suitable groom for Sita amongst his friends group or friend circle. I think the reason could have been because Sita's family were Brahmin and Sagar's surname suggests that he was a non-Brahmin. But at the end, Ram suggests to Sagar that I thought you would take my sister, and they all moved together. So I think it was a subtle reflection that the previous generation was still prevailing to the caste system, but the new generation, within their new traumas of unemployment and other circumstances, were, were now ready to give up those caste system.
This is quite possible, because like I said, there could be two reasons why they didn't look at Shagor as a potential, bridegroom. First of all, Shagor was living with them, so it would be unacceptable, right? Because love marriage and all. I mean, love marriage has been happening ever since, I think, but it will not be that, like, open-mindedness will not have reached that stage, I would say. 1950s, the script was being written in 1950s. And Brahmin family looking for a Brahmin bride groom, that would be the usual stuff. Yeah. And also Ghatak is very critical about how a woman is exhibitioned as a potential bride, and basically so utilitarian and objectifying, and open your hair, show me your ankle or whatnot. So those are the kinds of things, extremely humiliating. And coming back to Ananya's point again, these are something, these are very critical observation, and obviously we immediately get pissed off with those two gentlemen, right? So I think there is a reason why it was shown the way it was shown. It is a strong critique of this kinds of matchmaking and the problematic practices surrounding it. Yes, that was a good observation, Shuli.
Thank you, ma'am. Another thing is, I have watched Rekha, as you just said about the film. In that film also we noticed that from the beginning to the end, the word stays same, that amra kothay jabu, that means where should we go. And again in this film, we repeatedly hear Ramu saying that we will move to that dream house someday. We won't stay in this house for long.
Yeah.
And at the end also we see different families shifting to this house. And there also the husband tells his wife that we won't stay in this house for long. So I think in Ghatak's films, we don't know what happens to the characters after the film ends. But there is always one thing, that the journey is promised, not the destination.
Yeah. And also circularity. Like, everybody is coming here with the same kind of aspiration. So basically, I think we can look at it this way, that, human aspirations are very similar. A home, that is, what is home? Home is security. Home identifies, home is associated with our identity, safe space. But also, I mean, how safe was Shita's space in Subarnarekha at home? Because of the caste dynamics, like the home was disturbed at the end. I think Ghatak is at his best with reference to criticism of caste, and also the like partition. In partition, the caste and the regional dynamics played such a massive role. So in Kolkata, I'm talking about Kolkata because I have first-hand experience of living in Kolkata, which is why I'm talking about it. In Kolkata, there are several places which are called colony. colony in the sense, they were all refugee colonies, and then later on they were given the rights to the land where they, the government gave them vested land, government land to settle down and live there. And then you will see in different localities, people who settle, I mean, now probably it will be a little hard to find that, but I'm talking about 20 years, 30 years back when I was growing up. Then what used to happen, people from the same village will come and try to settle down in the same place. So say, for example, some people came from Dhaka Bikrampur. My mother's side of the family came from Dhaka Bikrampur. My father's side of the family came from Chittagong, Shondip, So they used to know, even after the partition, they used to know, they had a family connection, from before, because they came collectively, they came together, they flocked together so that, maybe to protect themselves or whatever, when people get displaced, there is a tendency to remain together so that, they can fight with adversities. So that is one of the cases. The people who were from, these are stories of upper caste people, Then the lower caste people, several of them were sent to Morijhapi, then, Dandakaranya, and these are the places they were sent. So Obhiram's mother in Subarnarekha comes back. You don't know where Obhiram's mother was taken. So the landlord's thugs took Obhiram's mother. You really don't know where she went. She just disappeared. Okay. She comes back only once, towards the middle of the film, where, there were few people coming back from Dandakaranya. So you know that these are the people who were, and they are Bagdis. They are Dalits. So these are the people who were clubbed together, sent back to different places, right? And this didn't, see, you will think Ishwar to be quite progressive in taking on, a Dalit child and raise them together. And it wouldn't have been a problem unless, of course, they fell in love with each other, like, Obhiram and Sita. So this is, there is a lot of things going on. It's Subarnarekha is actually my favorite Ghatak film, and the most complex and the most, I think, underappreciated Ghatak film, right? So yes, I strayed quite a lot. Okay, go on.
Would David, Ajanta, Funny Raj, and Tharakeshwar would like to speak? Like any one of you would like to contribute your questions?
Or just a comment. It doesn't have to be a question. I hardly know all the answers. I'm also trying to, work out.
Thank you.
Hi, David.
Hello again. I enjoyed the film. I found it interesting.
Yeah.
I appreciate the discussion. I don't think I have any original thoughts to make just yet, but thank you.
No worries, no worries. I'm so glad that you liked the film. I find
I do have one.
Yes,
it's
please.
a trivial point. I understood it was presented as a Malayalam film, which I associate with Kerala. And near the beginning, someone makes a comment that made me think that they were in Bengal.
Yeah, it was a Bangla film. It's a Bengali film. Yeah.
It's Bengali. It's not from Kerala. It's not Malayalam.
No.
Okay, thank you.
It was in Bengali. Yeah. I think, Ghatak, one thing I would like to add, Ghatak is very critical about the soundtrack of this film, but I think it has a very fascinating soundtrack. So you remember one sequence in which Kali Banerjee, the father character, is not very well, and then you hear the garage sound coming in, and then he tries to open the window, and then there is this garage sound comes, very harsh sound.
Yeah.
This has a very interesting production story about it.
Yes.
So actually, when they were the whole film was shot indoors. It was a studio, they created the set and everything. You see, it looks very much like a theater. The set looks very much theatrical, right? So they were shooting, and they were actually a garage outside the studio. And obviously, it was being shot with limited means, so they didn't have enormous like stock and anything. So they had to shoot that day. But the sound was incessant. It didn't stop. And then they requested, then they stopped for some time. But obviously it's their job. They can't stop it for the whole day because somebody is going to film. And then Ghatak actually used it very creatively in that sequence. So that soundtrack was actually ambient sound, like what we call sync sound these days. So it
adds
was
to the realism. Yes.
Yeah. And it actually he used that. So that was, I think that was quite remarkable.
On the subject of the sound, I mean, the violin playing was beautiful. The violin is a very difficult instrument, and I found it surprising that we saw a character playing, and is that a gulf, a failure of realism, because it would be very unusual for an amateur to play the violin that well.
I would think that like in Kolkata streets you do see artists like that, like with a harmonium, effortlessly playing harmonium, like, oh my god, I wish I could play like that. But they are just like, I don't want to call them beggars, but they sing, they perform, and then they ask for some money. Some of them are really, really talented, so that didn't contradict my idea of realism in a way. But I think that character, other than sometimes coming and playing that tune, he doesn't appear, but he appears to be a very significant signpost in the film's narrative. And I think Ghatak had this idea of an artist to be like socially committed artist, and then he is against spectacularization and commercialization, like that kind of, he believes in that kind of thing. And when Ramu offers him money, he asks for money, that give me money and then I'll play, right? But then once he plays without money, remember that? It's and also when he starts playing, the string breaks. The string of the violin breaks, right?
I missed that. Oh,
yeah. So I mean, it is very metaphoric in a way, like a fine artist is not appreciated, kind of thing. But also art touches everybody, and he waits and listens to that, and sometimes he doesn't also play, even if he is ready to pay, he doesn't. So basically it is like, I play when I wish. You pay and I perform, no, that is not happening. So that kind of I think dynamics is very interesting, to see. I mean, I don't know whether I'm reading too much into it, because I have watched that film so many times. So I try to see a little bit here, there, because that is one film people very rarely saw and discussed. So you will hardly ever find much writing on this film. So it's just, review here, review there, or, passing references kind of thing. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. I can see I'll have to watch it again.
Please do. I think you will like it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can go ahead. You might have switched off on your mic, I guess.
Hmm?
Tarakeshwar, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. It was quite an interesting discussion that we had. And
Thank you.
thank you, Sangeeta Sen, for the elaborate background that you gave in the beginning, trying to clear out some of the misconceptions or the arguments which are very popular to dispel it. But I think the discussion that came later on was also quite interesting, especially the issue of this post-colonial perspective. I was also thinking in terms of it was not simply an unemployment question. I think there was also a question of mismatch between the education and the job that is available. Especially in one of the interviews, it comes out starkly that
Oh,
you're
yeah.
overqualified, the BA is useless. So a kind of our education, which is geared up towards developing a clerk, is not producing the workforce that is a required kind of thing. So I thought it is a kind of a critique of the education system which was put in place by the colonial powers too. So in that sense, that could be one of the angles that could be pursued while we are looking at the post-colonial perspective. And then the question of social reality and melodrama, and the question of gender. I think all the three are related, I thought.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, melodrama is an exception to social reality, because one of the characteristics of social realism is that it is sans melodrama. But here there is a melodrama, and then what we are trying to call as a social realism mode of representation too. So how do these two go? You made an case of exception, and you try to say that we need to look at this kind of social realism in a very different way. Yeah, I think that is a valid point, but is it uh, a different kind of social realism in the context of only Ritwik Ghatak, or can it be extended to even other Bollywood movies?
I'm not
Or
sure about other Bollywood movies, but I think, Ritwik Ghatak, he was a Brechtian, actually politicize the medium of melodrama also. So, I mean, melodrama as a genre, it is supposed, boy meet girls, and then, there is happily, ever after kind of ending, right? But Ghatak's film is hardly ever uncomplicated. Like, there is hardly any resolution at the end. So there is an ongoingness in Ghatak's films. And I think Ghatak takes the emotional potentiality, affective potentiality of melodrama, and also its capacity to contain very heightened emotional moments. But Ghatak politicized melodrama, he changed it. He changed it to suit his purpose. So, I mean, obviously, I'm not a melodrama scholar. So, obviously, I have limitation in understanding the massive theoretical work has been done in this area. I don't think I qualify to talk definitively about this, but with reference to Ghatak, I feel that Ghatak did politicize the genre of melodrama, but Ghatak also politicized, myth, Indian mythology. Like if you look at, Subharnarekha, for example, in Subharnarekha, it is almost recreation of the Ramayana, and if you remember that, that young Sita lost in the aerodrome after seeing that Bahurupi, so she got really scared, right? And by the way, that Bahurupi is an improvisation. That was not in the script, that Bahurupi suddenly appeared and Ghatak decided to use him in the film. So one of Ghatak's colleagues, that person who remained very depressed and sad because his daughter ran away. So he starts telling a story. He first asked Sita, what is your name? Then she says, Sita. He said, okay, let me tell you a story, Ramayan, which is the story of Sita. So the way we understand Ramayan, at least in Bengali culture, we know Ramayan is the name is Ramayan, the story of Ram. But for Ghatak, and for right purposes, like in North India, several people, they don't say Ram Siya, they say Siya Ram. So Sita comes before. So in our folk culture and that kind of thing, Sita is actually a prominent character in that epic, right? But Ghatak actually tried to say that the Ramayana is the story of Sita. So let me tell you the story of Ramayan, which is the story of Sita. So that way. And also, Sita dies at the end, and then Sita is married to Ram. There is also some kind of reference, I mean, Sita and Abhiram, they grew up together. So in the same household, almost like siblings, right? That should, I mean, in foster care, people often grow up like that. But they fall in love with each other, and then, they finally marry. So these are not the recreation of myth that you would expect. Ghatak changed it. Also, if you remember the conversation between Ishwar and oh my God, I'm forgetting the Bijan Bhattacharya character. Who is the teacher? Who is the teacher, who rejects Ishwar as deserter? And then when they are coming to Kolkata to have that, like grotesque fun, bibhatsha maja, grotesque fun. And then in a completely drunken state, their exchange is about the Upanishads. And then after a very erudite kind of exchange, Kathopanishad and different kinds of Upanishad actually, they say that these people knew all these, but how does it matter? They haven't seen the war. They have erudite epistemological tradition, of high regard, is kind of being dismissed because it didn't really help people. So I think Ghatak weaves into his melodrama quite a lot of critical vantage point, and that's how he politicizes the form of melodrama. I mean, another filmmaker did it, Umberto Solas. In Lucia, I think I receive Lucia as a kind of there's a lot of melodrama being used. That's third cinema, but it has been used like that. And I think Umberto Solas's other work also used politicized melodrama, because melodrama has, I mean, many people think that melodrama has a capacity to connect because of its affective potential. My suspicion would be it worked similarly in case of Ghatak.
Well, just to add to that, I think the question of representation of women in this movie also came up earlier. One of the characteristics of social realism is that we have strong women characters. Even if you take the case of Brett, Mother Courage, and things like that. So here, the women characters are not so strong. They come out as strong only when they help the men in the time of crisis. It is not that they are taking the lead. When the man is down, they don't want to leave him and they want to be with him. They giving him some kind of support to him. That's how they come out in this movie. So that's also I thought slightly different from though Brechtian politics, or even if you say left politics is there, or socialism, politics of socialism is there, but slightly problematic. What I was trying to suggest that if this, if we can think in terms of melodramatic social realism being one of the feature of some of the so-called progressive and left in India, is it possible to theorize how different it is from the uh, hardcore social realist uh, articulations? Uh, can it be further expanded and seen in terms of, I don't know whether I'm speaking from the vantage point of today, quote unquote, the failure of the left in India today kind of thing. This kind of melodramatic social realism might be the reason for it. I don't know. It's a loud thinking. Or it
Yeah,
might
I mean,
be
me neither. I'm not
today
sure either.
from a
And
vantage point.
also, yeah, like also, I think, like failure of leftism is too big a claim. I don't like to make a general claim like that. So I would, like respectfully disagree with you, because, left and right, I mean, left wing politics, if you look at the UK today, left the left in the labor, they're all sidetracked, or like silenced or being thrown away. Like the right turn that the labor has taken is mind blowing. They have proscribed Palestine Action, as a terrorist group just a few days back. So can you imagine a left group doing that? So basically, there are moments when left politics thrives and succeeds to visibility. But I do think left politics, the resilience of left politics is the strength of left politics. We are there. We are there. May not be very visible, but I think left is very much there, and there is no monolithic left politics across all eras or all time, across time. I think left politics, when they become fossilized, that is actual defeat. But I think it is. I mean, left politics has to recreate themselves according to the demands of the socio-economic kind of necessities. I think so. That is one of the things, and I don't know whether I haven't yet thought about it, but you have given me some food for thought. I'll think about it, but I don't know whether just one singular use of melodrama, using melodrama or experimentation with melodrama can actually predict uh, failure of left cultural project. I'm not sure. Or not using melodrama. It's like these are all formal experiments, and filmmakers, they are doing formal experiments forever. And obviously, a person like Ghatak, he was always doing some kind of experimentation or the other, like any other filmmaker, literally. So yeah.
No, let me clarify. I was
Yeah.
not making a very general statement about failure of left everywhere. I was
Yeah.
specifically talking about left in the Indian context. And if failure is a big term, let us look at it as a kind of what is the unique characteristics of left cultural politics in India. I was not only thinking only in terms of uh, uh, Ritwik Ghatak, but also in the Kannada context, Kannada theatre. Uh, the breadth came in a major way.
Yeah.
And the way Girish Karnad, B.V. Karan, and others used it, I was also thinking it was quite different from the way Brecht and the cultural politics of Brecht happened in the European context. So it was a loud thinking, and then even I might be completely wrong. But if we can look at it as a kind of uniqueness of Indian context, it could be quote unquote failure. It could be, as you said, adapting to the local situation. You can't completely go away with, as you said, the caste, for example. At that point of time, it was not possible to completely think in terms of marriage alliances outside the particular community. Some kind of realignment of the ideology in culture, in the arena of cultural politics might be happening. So in that sense, the uniqueness of left, if you want to call it like that, you can call it like that. But what are the implications of that today, from today's vantage point? I'm not talking about that day, but today, when we look at it, what is happening in India, and then look at what all happened in 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s and 80s, the kind of cultural politics. Are there some strands in that which gave rise to the context in which we are today? So it was a loud thinking.
I think, of course. I mean, continuity is always there. I mean, continuation, like, if we start thinking about the Hindu nationalist, like thoughts coming to some kind of, existence of its own. I mean, that has connection to Swarajya Mela, Hindu Mela, all those things that's happening pre-colonial days, starting out in Kolkata and then, like spreading all across India. And obviously, there are continuation. And obviously in India, the caste situation is so old and so, like, its caste is so prevalent yet so invisible, right? And obviously it is invisible to the privileged, not invisible to the people who are at the receiving end. So oftentimes people will say India has changed now, like particularly in Bengali society, I hear it all the time that there is no caste system. Oh my God, are you kidding me? I mean, Bengali society is highly caste divided. How can anybody say that, there is no, we don't do caste discrimination? I mean, individually people might not do it, but there are more like intercaste marriages and those kinds of things. But it doesn't mean that casteism doesn't exist there. I mean, I have seen it in my family. I have seen people's, maybe not very toxic practice of casteism, like, somebody marrying into different caste and that person is going to be killed or something. It may not be that toxic, but I mean, people keep talking about things. So casteism is very much there. And I think casteism makes Indian situation very different. With reference to left politics also, because left politics in India is not outside the society, it is very much inside the society. Also think about this pervasive Islamophobia that exists within Indian society. Even highly educated people, sometimes well-meaning people, they are not free from it. I have seen people talking things which are absolutely unacceptable. I mean, I think all these things are there. And sometimes the problem, I find it problematic that we are not ready to acknowledge it. That is the problem. Unless we acknowledge the existence of our respective prejudices, it is very difficult to fight it, because unless we acknowledge it, there can never be a point of conversation and debate. This is through which we move forward, leave behind our own respective prejudices. I mean, misogyny is the same thing. I mean, it's so misogynistic. Like, I'm sure everybody here have some kind of direct and indirect experience. I'm not just talking about women here, men, non-binary people, LGBTIQ plus people. I mean, all of us are in the receiving end of patriarchy and its offshoot, misogyny, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia. All these things work. And we also can't decontextualize films when from the time that they were made. So if today Ghatak made Nagarik, I think things will be different. And when Ghatak made this film, then the concerns were different. So, but there are also some universal things, like you rightly pointed out, the criticism of the education system, the colonial education system, and lack of jobs. And obviously 1950-51, the first 5-year plan hasn't yet come to effect. So like job creation, so it's a newly formed kind of country. They're still thinking about several things, and the food crisis will take place. You remember that character of Keshto Mukherjee, who is looking to buy some mangoes for his hungry child, and asks for money to Ramu, where he's saying that this boy is always crying because looking for food, hungry child crying. And these are all issues which are still relevant today, like migration, lack of job, and also these days, people coming out of engineering colleges, working in call center. I mean, what kind of education system is this, and what kind of government do we have? What kind of system works where it doesn't consider its citizens? So I think these are the questions I would say that still relevant. But obviously there are some representation which are at par with the 1950s. The criticism is also of 1950s. So yeah, there are certain things from which we moved on, but there are certain things which are still relevant in today's life, I would say.
Muskan, have you slept off? Yeah.
And like to contribute or something. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry?
If anybody else like to contribute,
Oh, yeah,
they can
yeah,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found this film thematically very rich. In fact, presenting some of the issues in a direct, didactic way, but also nuanced way. So the class and gender, these two issues are very obvious. As coming back to the question of gender, that if, as Tarkeshwar was also saying, and you were talking about emotional labor. So if we connect both, we find that these women characters, so for example, Sita is the one who is proposing to Sen, what is his name? Sagar Sen.
Yeah.
Sagar Sen, who lives there as a tenant. Again, so she is the one who is, taking initiative.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we have the character of Uma, who is helping, who is ready to go with our protagonist, Ramu, in such adverse circumstances. So both these characters are presented in a very strong way. And in fact, Uma is the one who is asking him to go to the family. What happens that there is a shift from the individual happiness to the collective happiness.
Right.
That when there is this Jatin Babu who has left the house.
Yeah.
Now at that time Ramu comes and Uma says that Jatin has left. Now I'm alone here. And then so Ramu wants to stay, but it is that time that Uma reminds him that your father is ill. Go back to the family. Go and attend. Help him.
Yeah.
So in many places we find this. It's not about romanticizing the privacy of a couple but it is, coming back to the community living. And the question of unemployment is also presented in a very nuanced way. For example, the friend of Ramu says that, if you get the job, it's not just an individual problem. If you get the job, that the other person will not get the job.
Yeah.
Okay. And if that person gets the job, you will not get the job. So this is how the system is working. It's like reserved army of labor. So you have, always people who are waiting to get the employment. So in the system, everybody doesn't get employed. So some people will remain unemployed. And it is not like it is just your own problem that you get employment. So that's over. That's the end of the world. But there are other people who will still remain unemployed. So this question is raised in a very nuanced way in that conversation. Then the question sorry, I'll just finish and some of the points. So and the question of nepotism is raised. The corruption also in a very nuanced way, because if Sen is saying that there's so much of natural resources in our country, and how does it happen that we are still poor? Okay, this country with so much of natural resources. Then another point which I found interesting is the nuanced presentation of optimism also, that this person, Ramu, is even, the camera focuses on him, on his face, and many, like I have seen most of the time, he's looking upward. It's like, and at that time he's sitting disappointed, and the tenant comes and he asks him, then he's still looking at the sky. He says that, look at the, he says something about the sky. So, and in his bodily posture, that he's looking upward, he's looking in the front, he's always thinking about future, what kind of future he will have. Whereas his father, so there is an interesting dialogue, but at one point his father says, if you accept failure, then maybe you will end up succeeding. So that statement I found very interesting. Maybe in one system, if you keep on trying, and there is a limit to that. So unless you accept that it has failed, you will not try for another system. You are still in the same box. You are trying very hard. Then the way different characters perceive time, that's another interesting aspect to study, which is like mother is always talking about the past. She remembers her, how she planted this tree, how she used to live in that big house. So facing the present difficult circumstances, she has to go back to her memories of the past. Whereas father looks at life as a lottery. He says, he also talks about the job. It's like, reminding me of the song of Manu Chao, that La vida es un tombola. The life is a lottery.
Okay.
Whereas Ramu is always thinking about future. So whatever may be the circumstances, maybe in future it will be better. It's going to be better. So there is always a search for happiness. Even despite, frustration, desperation, everything, we find there is a search for happiness which is present till even in the, Sita, then who is ready to go with the Suresh, Sen. Okay, Sagar Sen. And that Uma also. Okay. So in way, many of these characters are trying to survive, at least minimum, which can do for life. And if possible, try to find a better life. So,
definitely. So, I mean, these are all really, really very good observations. And I agree with you. I think there is quite a bit of nuance in representation, but this is also one of very verbally heavy film of Ghatak, very dialogue dependent. Almost, this is why also I think it is so theatrical. It is so much dialogue dependence. There is a lot of dialogue dependence is there in this film. That is one thing. Second thing, I'm so glad that you spoke about the character of Uma, and here I would like to talk about, Uma is one person who is actually a working woman. She does a little bit of tailoring work to run the family. So she is actually a breadwinner for the family. And her sister is also, Gita Sen, who will become Mrinal Sen's wife later on. So that character, oh my God, I'm forgetting the name of that character. What is the name of that character? Uma's sister?
Shiuli.
Shiuli, right. Yes. So that character resorts to sex work. Yeah. And then if you remember, there is one dialogue in the film that, somebody, I think Uma confronts her, and then saying that I never knew that you will descend to this level. And then she is saying that, there is nothing right and wrong. Whatever sustains you is the right kind of work. So it's almost like equating sex work with a labor. And this has been a huge kind of, demand of, Marxist feminists like Rosa Luxemburg, tried making sex workers, making sex workers of Berlin party member, about which they had Clara Zetkin and Lenin had a conversation about this. So, these are all very quite ongoing kind of conversation within the left, socialist, communist, Marxist, political scenario that, to define labor. And I think Ghatak's Marxist education, and Ghatak, although Ghatak was expelled from the party, Ghatak remained a Marxist until the moment he died. So that way, I think his worldview was quite Marxist and very grounded on a lot of understanding, reading, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so you do see these kinds of representation in his film, like woman doing tailoring work, but the sister not just getting into something else. So it is, this film doesn't see Shiuli's preference or choice as some kind of moral degeneration, but a compulsion. Like, if we watch Akaler Sandhane, we will see that Mrinal Sen also looked at the character that Smita Patil played in the film within film. So you see that during war, during famine, there is such exigency that people do whatever they need to do to survive, and it is difficult to put a moral compass on that. And obviously patriarchy, it is the job of patriarchy to put moral compass on everything. Women are highly scrutinized, being within this system. So that, but also Ramu's fragile masculinity. Ramu, this dreamy-eyed boy, thinking that everything is going to sort out, probably because, maybe before the partition, the move from the big house to the small house, his life may have been very sheltered. From his education and everything, it is clear that they did have some privilege at some point of time. And he is still thinking very optimistic, but not so realistic. So the job situation, like you pointed out, one person getting a job means the other competitor is not getting the job. But the situation, the independence that was promised to people wasn't this independence. What kind of independence was this? So, like the kind of quotation or slogan, ye ajadi jhuta hai, that resonates. So it's a false independence. It is independence for some people. The power was shifted from the British elite to the Indian political elite. I mean, where are we, the masses? So I think these are all very legitimate critical points that the leftists raised at that point. And I think this is also relevant today, given that NRC CAA situation, and when one section of Indian citizenry, they are facing the charge of almost like the threat is hanging on their shoulder, that they might not remain the citizen of this country. Then like, if people ask the question, what kind of independence do we have, or have we achieved, and what kind of celebration that we are doing, I mean, it's a legitimate question, and these questions emerge from people's lived experiences, isn't it? Okay, the radio silence.
I think we should wrap this up.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's
So,
quite late.
thank you so much, Sangeeta ma'am, for your good insights into the movie, and
No
also
problem.
Ritwik Ghatak himself.
Yeah.
And thank you personally and from my team TFO as well.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
everyone for tuning in.
thank you. I mean, TFO is doing such an amazing job, and it's quite nice to be able to come together with like-minded people, talking to people. It's really wonderful. Yeah.